B-Town. Scott Bramley here with another edition of the Remote Learning Rundown. On this episode, we have our community of learners, staff teaching staff. I will be joined by several ETHS staff members who are sharing what they've been doing in the classroom during enhanced e-learning. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm joined here with another guest from ETHS, Ms. Schulman, who will introduce herself in a moment. In this episode, we're talking about just things that we're sharing with each other, what we're doing in e-learning, how things are going, and just really trying to create a forum for teachers, classroom staff to connect with each other and share what is happening during e-learning. It's one of the things we lose not being in the building together. We can't have the hallway conversation where we're sharing, hey, this just happened in third period, or I'm trying to do this. So I've invited interested ETHS staff members to join us to share what they're working on. So Ms. Schulman, would you mind introducing yourself, and we'll get right into it.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Ms. Schulman, and I am in the English department.
Wonderful. So, the prompt was pretty open-ended. We're just kind of really talking about like things that you've been doing in your class so far that you want to share with folks, just to, like I said, create that community of learners across the district. So what are some of the things you've been working on?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you, Mr. Bramley, for doing these. I've been watching them, and they've been really helpful for me. And especially the last video that you did, I incorporated some things that the students were saying. So it's been really helpful. So thank you. I will say that I would not know what's working without the feedback that I'm getting from students and their families. And I'm really trying to just adapt to what they need and what works with them. There seems to be a real humility that I have felt from students and their families around this, always remembering why we're doing this in the first place. There's a real sense that I'm getting that that we're really in this together and that we are learning together and that this is new for all of us. So I am constantly asking for feedback from students on what is working for them so that I can adapt and try to, just try to work with everything that we're trying to do here. I'm also really trying to create the conditions for them to share to the extent that they are comfortable. So whether it's reading articles that are talking about what's happening in the world with COVID, just providing opportunities for them to try to create our class community with what is relevant and balancing that with everything else that we're doing, making the content relevant, trying to always try to keep in the back of my mind that there are very complicated lives behind these screens and finding ways to honor their humanity in a way that is comfortable for them. I am noticing that I am stating the purpose of every little thing that I'm doing. So in a 70-minute class, I'm probably stating it literally 40 times. And I'm just trying to remind them, so the reason we are doing this Padlet is because we are looking at images live together. The reason we are editing this document is so that we can all give each other feedback together simultaneously. The purpose of watching this short video is so that we can experience this together and explaining how this is connected to the content. So I am noticing that I am constantly stating the purpose, whether it's Padlet or Jamboard or using Google Question to give a quiz, just making sure to explain how the technology is a tool in teaching the content. The other thing that's working is the accessibility and the reliability of the IT department. I would be lost without them. They have been immediate in feedback and help. And then the other thing I think, as you mentioned, we don't have the hallway kind of spontaneous conversations, and so it feels like nothing is random. And so I've had to be much more intentional in getting help. And so I think every day I am talking with several colleagues about what we are doing and, hey, do you have ideas for me to do this Socratic seminar? We're starting this book. Let's talk about that. So I think, because we don't have those random conversations in the hallway, I'm trying to be very intentional. And I'm constantly calling colleagues after the school day to try to, just to help each other and to talk through what we're doing during this time. So those are just a few things I'm trying to do.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Liz. I really appreciate you joining me today and sharing those thoughts with your colleagues. I think one of the key parts that I want to highlight and take out is just that intentionality of purpose and sharing with the students the purpose. And, it sounds like you have good feedback loop with your students and just how important, that partnership is. It's always an important part of teaching and learning, but just in this environment, I think it's getting amplified. The need to just be a little more intentional about communicating the why and partnering with our students to figure out, because we're all figuring it out together. So,
Yeah,
so
sure.
thank you so much, Ms. Schulman. I really appreciate your time. All right, everybody, thank you. I'm here with another ETHS teacher who wants to share a little bit, or is willing to share a little bit of what he's been doing with his classes during enhanced e-learning. And again, the purpose is just to come together as a community, to have a forum where we can share with each other. None of us are experts right now. We're all figuring this out. And so I really appreciate Kurt being here today and being willing to do that. So Kurt Gladstein, would you please introduce yourself to everybody, and then we'll get going.
Sure. I'm Kurt Gladstein. Good to see all of you guys. I just had a couple of things I just wanted to share out with you guys. Like Scott said, I'm not an expert. I'm learning every day, failing more often than I'm succeeding, and kind of learning from that. There were just a couple of things that I kind of wanted to share out. So I've been doing a lot of student surveys and trying to get that consistent feedback and try to take that data in to see what's best working for kids and what their preferences are. Because at the end of the day, if a kid doesn't want to listen to you, they can just turn their stuff off. So I'm trying to avoid that. But in any case, a couple areas where students have really given me a lot of feedback. The first one was on our breakout rooms. As a foreign language teacher, we learn languages socially. And so I can't do that in front of a group of 30 people. So I have to kind of try to perfect these breakout rooms through the course of the year. And one thing that I've really enjoyed, and one thing that the students have liked, is when they go into breakout rooms, that they have choice, okay? So if I'm setting up a communicative task and they're speaking to one another, that's one thing. And I kind of tell them, hey, you have to do this. And I kind of scaffold through the task what they need to talk about. But if it's something that they can work on individually, or maybe they want to bounce off of one another, it's something students have really appreciated. So when I send them on an individual task, or maybe something they're building as a group, to then show what they've produced to the whole class, 5, 6, 7 minutes later, it's been that they can either work with their team and kind of produce a product together, or they can do it individually and then consult at the end of that task. And so what I've been doing is giving them a bit longer timeframes to work, and they can come out of the break room if they want and run an idea by me. But those groups that really kind of feed off of I want to run this by someone else before I present it in the group, that kind of minute or two at the time, at the end, I've been kind of saying, hey, let's kind of gather up, make sure we're doing this, and then come back. And so that's something students have liked. I can engage with my group members if I have a good kind of energy with them. Or if I'm not really feeling it and I need to be myself for today, I can work by myself and still participate. So that was the first thing. And the second thing is on our asynchronous learning. I just thought hey, our students don't get enough long periods of listening in our languages. And so I've been doing choice-based podcasts on Mondays. And so I just kind of set up a podcast that everyone has to do, and then a podcast where they get to choose between 2 or 3. And the assignment, I kind of guide them through with questions, like most of us do, to make sure students don't get lost right away. But in any case, it's been really beneficial. My students have come back and said, hey, this is great. I like knowing that I can just sit and do a listening. I can do it on my phone somewhere and just type it in. I can be out at the park doing something like this. And they've just really kind of liked the freedom of that assignment. And even my students who said, hey, this is really difficult, most of them have come back and said, my skills for my listening are going up because we're listening for longer periods than we ever have. Yeah. So I guess it's just, like I said, a podcast or something that is in the field that's not a teacher teaching. It's just something built within the construct of whatever your field is. And like mine said, they can talk about really anything as long as it's in Spanish. My students have really liked that.
Wonderful. So real quick question, Kurt, like on the podcast piece, are you creating this? Is this your content, or is it
No.
what's already
So
out there that's readily available?
it's content that's already available, and I just search like Spanish language, and I do the level, like an intermediate level podcasts, and I type it up, and it comes back. I mean, a ton of responses have come back. Obviously, it's simpler for my field because I can just type in Spanish. As long as it's in the language and related somewhat to their content, they can listen, or to the units that we're doing, we can listen. But yeah, I mean, it's been something that the students get to choose. So if there's one that they really like, they kind of follow that series. If there's one if they don't really like it, or if they want to test different ones out, they get that choice too.
Wonderful. Wonderful, man. Thank you so much. That's so important. I think I just want to pull out a couple of themes that I heard you shared. One at the beginning, you started right off with student feedback and really just kind of taking in from your students. I think, Ms. Shulman was on earlier on the show, and she mentioned this as well. And I think that kind of just communicating that we're in partnership together. We always strive for that in education, but it's so important during this time. It just gets amplified so much more, the need to communicate very intentionally that we're in this together. And so, how do you communicate that? Well, one of the ways is by choice and by gathering feedback, right? And so I just really wanted to pull that out and emphasize. And there was one other thing you said that I think really might help folks, and it was kind of just in passing about your breakout rooms, but I want to elevate it for just a second, because a lot of feedback we've been getting from teachers with managing breakout rooms is like, it's really frenetic to like pop into all the different rooms, and I can't really control that. And what I picked up from what you said was, and please clarify if I'm wrong, but that sometimes when they go into their breakout rooms, the norm is more for the students to come out of their breakout rooms back into the main room to check in with you, as opposed to you going to the individual breakout rooms. Is that true? Is that kind of how you characterize that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, I mean, can you speak for just 30 seconds or so just on how that's been working? Like, is it, do the students really respond to there, or is that just kind of organically happening?
It's going to depend on what the student wants. At the end of the day, the student can press the button whether or not they want to come back or just stop.
It's very true.
And you can encourage that. But your students who kind of want more, what's nice is your students who maybe feel overwhelmed, they get the kind of space to sit back, which I think, in my view, now is maybe more important than ever. Because I never know where students' anxiety levels are kind of floating in my class.
Sure.
But your students who are kind of really want to do more and kind of have that drive and want to kind of go to the next step, they can come out and they can be put on kind of their next task if they want.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kurt. I really appreciate your time. All right, E-Town, I am here with another one of your colleagues who has been willing to share what she's been doing with her students during enhanced e-learning. So I'm going to ask Marla to introduce herself and then take it away.
All right, great. Thank you, Scott. Hi, everybody. I'm Marla Seibold, and I'm one of the art teachers here. And I'm really excited to be able to share with you my high-tech setup that I do here. The big question that I've been getting mostly is, how do you teach ceramics remotely? This is really an amazing thing. Or, are you going to fire that in their ovens and, that kind of stuff. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about how I do that. The art teachers and I, Petra Mayton and Gina Coleman and myself, we got together and we made art kits for each kid, and everybody got a shoebox with clay and very exotic tools like a plastic fork, a plastic spoon. We got paper clips and that sort of thing. So the kids have all that, and then we all use document cameras to demonstrate, and then the kids work during class time. So one of the cool things that I have the students do is take their Chromebook tops and tip them down. So during class, I can actually see all of their hands working. And then with kids that don't want to have their screens on, I'll just ask them, can you turn on your screen? Show me your pot. So their faces aren't actually on it. Another thing that we did was we spent a lot of time in the beginning of the school year teaching them how to take good pictures of their work, because the way that we're grading is we're having them turn in photographs of their work, and at the end of each class period they have to turn in a photo of an in-process piece, and we show them how to clear off their area, how to be in focus, how to crop, and all that. So they all got like a little quick tutorial in photography. The other thing that we had them do is really take responsibility for taking care of their clay. So all the things that we've been doing in class with like covering the clay and all that sort of thing, we spent a lot of time talking about that, and then also just cleaning up because it's a big mess. And so, you know, not all those parents want to have have clay all over. So let me just show you my document camera. I'm going to turn my screen right here. It's kind of a mess in my space right here, but you can see right up here, I have my document camera set up. I also have this for my phone when I take still photos of things right there. And then that's my work area. And now let me switch over just to show you what it looks like for the student view when I demo.
Wonderful. Marla, while you're getting that set up, is that your document camera from school, or did you have to go out and buy yourself a new one or something?
That is my document camera from school that I was able to take home and get all the proper cords and everything, and I promise I'll bring it back.
Really no, I think that's totally acceptable. It's totally acceptable. No, thank you. I just wanted to highlight that. Like, that's a no-cost solution for what you're trying to do here. So
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let me just show you right here. You can see I have my piece that, you know, and I can hold it in my hand. I can demonstrate, you know, in front of the camera how to do something, you know, all of that, and then the kids can see me working like that.
Wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, Scott, any questions?
Thank you so much, Marla. No, I wanted to highlight a couple just things that you brought up. You know, they seem so simple, but during this remote time, it's just so important. Like the basic things, like how do you set up your station to do the work? And even if you just have a corner of a table that you're working from, like how do you optimize that so that you can engage the way that your teacher is communicating as a student? I think that's so helpful. And just like those basic things like cleanup, setup, takedown, like things that, you know, you go over in the classroom. I mean, I've been in your class, I've seen that, but it's at home, it has a whole different layer to it. And so you have to take the time to actually emphasize that and go through it. And we can't assume those things. And so
right, for sure. I mean,
that.
we have students working on the floor because we also had them take a picture of their area, show us where you're working, just so we can give you some tips and all of that. One of the things we did give the kids was canvas so they can keep their area clean. But yeah, all of those things. And the same thing for my painting class. And I know with the other art classes where they're using a lot of materials, you know, you just don't wipe your acrylic paintbrush on a towel at home, you know, so.
On your shirt?
Yeah, on your shirt, right. Oh, I did have a situation where my students were painting and a girl's cat walked across her palette.
Oh, so no.
It was sort of like a 911. What do I do? What do I do? So yeah, that was fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I also just want to thank.
Exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And just thank you again for the idea, you know, the idea of having students working with the camera lid, you know, down. You can kind of see what they're doing, but it's also a screen break, you know, still being live, still being on camera, but not with my face or not having the light from the computer affecting me, you know, for the entire duration of the time. So just another interesting way to be able to stay connected during the 70-minute block, but not have it be necessarily always on camera for the students. So I really appreciate that idea.
Thank you.
All right, E-Town, I am here with Mr. Daoudi from the World Languages Department. He's going to introduce himself in 1 second here, but if you remember, we're here together just sharing what we've been doing during e-learning. So Kenan was so gracious to accept the invitation to come speak with us today. And so I'm going to ask him to introduce himself, and then we'll hear a little bit about what he's been doing.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. So hi, everyone. My name's Kenan Daoudi. I am a new teacher here at Evanston, but I am an alumnus. So some of you may have even had me as your student back in the day. Wasn't there that long ago. Just going to share a couple of things that I have done in my French class since the year started. Planning for e-learning, I knew that I was going to need to have some structure and consistency as much as possible. So a lot of my things were like ongoing projects that the students would learn how to do in the beginning, and they'll be doing them throughout the whole year. So one of them is at the start of every week with my French 4 and 5 students. I do an activity called Where's Mr. Dowdy? Où est Monsieur Dowdy? And I basically put a digital background with landscape or a cityscape or some kind of image from a francophone country, because there are a lot of them. And then I put 3 clues in French above my head. Sometimes I have to move, but I put 3 clues about the country, and I also play a song from that country and share the audio. And I give the students that time to think about what it might be, to maybe decode the clues, to just enjoy the music. And then they all guess what country I'm in. This one got cut off a little bit, but I put a background of a country where French is commonly used. In this case, it's, well, maybe you can guess it. I put a background of a country where French is commonly used, and I put some clues about that country at the top in the image. So for example, this one's saying the official language is Arabic, this country is a monarchy, and I believe the first clue was that it is in North Africa. So then once I reveal it, there's a second part where we have Padlet. Padlet has a map template now, which works out great. So the second part of the activity is they go into a class Padlet, and they all go to that one country that we're talking about, and they put a pin, and I tell them to research anything that they're interested in, like maybe relating to their hobbies or their own personal life. Like if they're athletes, maybe they'll find something about sports, or if they like eating, something about food, anything relating to that country that's interesting to them, and put a little post in that Padlet map, and then comment on each other's stuff. So I give them about 10 minutes for that part, to find a post, put a post, and comment on their classmates' posts. And then if they finish before that, I tell them you can step away, use the bathroom, whatever you need to do. So that's one of my ongoing things. We also do a reflective journal once every 2 weeks on Flipgrid, where they're speaking in French about different topics relating to our classroom themes. So this week is telling about your name. Where does your name come from? Who gave it to you? What does it mean symbolically, literally? And so I'll go into Flipgrid and start looking at those. They don't see each other's, so those are going just to me. But I tell them that if they want, I try to find ways for them to also share with each other what they're comfortable sharing outside of Flipgrid on the same topic. So those are just a few of our ongoing projects in French class. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And speaking of identity and how important that is, a name, and I totally messed up your name. I'm so sorry. I totally knew it was Dowdy, and I totally mispronounced it. So
no worries. I've been, it's not an easy name. I'm still figuring it out myself.
I appreciate the grace of my error. So thank you so much for sharing. I think one question I just had for you in that, because I want to highlight a couple of the things that you talked about, and that with the where's Mr. Dowdy at the beginning of the class, it seems like, obviously you're on camera and they can see you and they're seeing the questions or the prompts and clues, but that seems like a good time where maybe they don't have to be on camera because they're watching what you're doing and kind of responding to that, and they're not interacting with each other necessarily in that moment. Do you tend to set it up that way, or do students tend to be camera off at that point, or does it not matter? Or, you talk a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, I usually tell them you can mute your video at this point if you want to. I didn't really make a point of giving them specific instructions, but I gave them the option of, muting for that time their video. Some of them already have their videos off. So,
right. Yeah, we're finding that it's certainly varies across different days and different classes and different things. But I think it's just, as some of the students talked about last time on the show, like just the idea of when there's an opportunity to maybe be camera off, that, capitalizing on that. So there's some screen breaks and things like that. So I really appreciate you highlighting the pieces that you've just been talking about. And I did not know that Padlet released a map template. So that's awesome. Like, I got to check that out now.
Mm-hmm. You can put a pin in there with a link, an image, little comment. I'm very grateful for that.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. All right, E-Town, welcome back to the Remote Learning Rundown. I'm here with Mr. Held from the Science Department, who will introduce himself in a moment and get started. But as you know, we've been talking to ETHS teachers about what they've been doing during enhanced e-learning with their students. So that is why Mr. Held is here today. Take it away.
Hey, thanks, Scott. First of all, I just want to pay it forward. This is an activity that Dan DeBrown, Emily Habert came up with help from the IT department, David Chan, Melanie Marzan, and then Mina Marion. Thank you, because you guys helped us get started on this and the kids really loved it. So I'll share this with you. I'm going to share screen. We used it, so it's an app that the kids will download on their phone. Can you see that, Scott? It says My Games.
Yep, we're all good. We're all good,
okay,
Adam.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, so this is an app the students are going to download onto their phones. It's an app called Goose Chase. We have, I know this because the conversations with the wonderful IT department, we have a school license for this that we've paid for. So email David and you can get access to this. But what we used it for was a getting to know you activity. And I think it's going to become a lot more because the kids really are like asking for this now. So basically the way it works is it's what it says. It's an online scavenger hunt. So, so we set up missions. These are the list of missions we set up. So for example, this is physics. The kids had to find something 1 centimeter thick, all the way down to find someone that has a funny joke, post video evidence, find someone in your group that that can have a conversation in a language other than English, provide proof, find someone with a party trick. Right, so some of these were physics, some of these were getting to know you, but that's kind of how we started the year. And then let me show you what it looks like from when the kids are finished. So the kids do these videos, they earn points. There's a leaderboard, so that competitive nature that like is in Kahoot, for example, that kind of gets the kids going is present in this game, and it kind of kept the kids psyched throughout the activity. As they post their missions. I, as a teacher, am able to watch it. So this is an example of a party trick, or sorry, this was a stick challenge this student had to do. That's fine.
It's a wonderful determination there. Killing it.
Yeah, so this was a good one. So this was the language challenge. Only 2 teams out of the 5 teams did it, but this is one of my students speaking. I'm not sure what language.
Ekaro, Baba.
Shalafiani.
Adupe.
Karo Sophia.
Ekaro, Baba.
So what's great about this, or what was fun for our class, is once they've completed their missions, and you know, depending on how much time you give them, we give them 30 minutes. What I then did is brought the kids back in from the breakout rooms, shared the screen, and we actually watched these videos. And so they were able to see kind of each other's talents. We discussed some of them, like, oh, who has a pet, right? So I'm sharing screen, and I think this kid's Colin's talking about his dog Greta. So it gives the kids a chance. It gave the kids a chance to get to know each other in kind of a deeper way. We're also thinking about using this as a kind of end of a unit review. For example, in forensics, we just studied the 5 amendments that deal with your personal rights. We may have students kind of act these out as part of a scavenger hunt, like act out a 4th Amendment violation, act out a 5th Amendment violation, something like that. So this was just something that David helped me set up. It's real easy once you've emailed him, and the kids really seem to enjoy it, and it gets them out of the. I'm gonna stop screen sharing now. The kids said in the feedback, it got them out of the monotony of like kind of lecture, breakout room, come back. It was like they're moving around their house. Some kids went outside. Some kids called like family and did like a FaceTime conversation. So that was kind of cool.
That's wonderful. I mean, I think you're hitting on a lot of key points, but that last part there is just like changing it up a little bit, right? Something else that they can do, still engage a little bit differently, uses some technology, but also changes it up for them a little bit. So that's very cool. Really quickly, Adam, can you just talk like how, I saw a lot of challenges there, right? And I think, I remember playing Goose Chase like a couple of years ago on like one of our institute days with like the different missions. And so I'm just, how quickly can you set up a mission, right? Like if somebody wanted to go into this, like, is it this laborious thing that's going to take hours to set up, or is it relatively simple?
It's actually really simple. It took, the part for me that took more time was thinking up what the missions would be. But once I knew what the missions would be, like just inputting them takes, I can show you, but it's pretty easy. Do you want me to show?
It doesn't sound like it takes that much time at all, right?
No, it takes very little time. So don't be intimidated. It is technology, but it is like low learning curve, small learning curve.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Adam, for sharing this with us and paying it forward, giving respect and credit where it's due. We have an amazing team of people, and that's really the spirit of this episode, is really learning from each other. We, as a community of learners, we all have a lot that we can bring to this. We're all doing it for the first time together. And so, connecting with each other, sharing what each other's doing, and giving some respect when people are helping us out. I really appreciate you highlighting that for us, Adam. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks.
All right, E-Town, I'm here joined with Ms. O'Connell from the World Languages Department. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself in a moment here. And just a reminder that we're just learning from each other. We're trying to be a learning community, doing this for the first time and just sharing ideas from our experience. So Ms. O'Connell was so gracious to come onto the show today to share what she's been doing with her Japanese classes. So thank you so much.
じゃあ皆さんはじめまして、オコーネルと申します。So, I'm Margaret O'Connell. I'm a second year teacher here at ETHS, also ETHS class of 2009, so very excited to be back. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I've been doing. I've found it very important to promote that SEL, social emotional learning, and incorporate that into every class period. And I found that the students really appreciate that check-in. So one thing my colleague, Michael Van Cray, and I have been doing in the Japanese department is over the summer, we made this kind of feelings board like you would see when you walk into like a kindergarten classroom with, different faces and different emotions that have Japanese terms on them, like tired or excited or sad or anxious. So that's been nice for two reasons. It gives them a whole bunch of vocab we don't often cover in the curriculum in Japanese, and also it allows students to tell me how they're feeling. And it's been a good way to just kind of start conversation in class. So we have an opening routine that we do in the target language that's all in Japanese. And after that, I just put the feelings board up and I ask them how they're feeling. And also important to note that Michael Van Cray and I made our own, and it's bunnies. And we did that on purpose because there are a bunch of pre-made ones online that are unsurprisingly all white faces, all white kids. And we didn't want that, and so we chose to do animals, so it's kind of a neutral territory. I'm happy to share that template with anybody who would like it. You can also do this in English too. This is not world language specific, but if, for example, a kid shares that they're tired, then I usually ask a follow-up question, why? And they share things like, I was up until 2 a.m. doing this project, or I'm having trouble managing my time and getting my projects done. And so that has tended to start conversation with other kids in the class. And I found it's actually a good way to build community as well, because they kind of get this feeling of, oh, okay, other people are struggling with this too. Okay, yeah, I can relate to that. I was also up until 1 a.m. doing this science project. So that's been very effective. The other thing is I'm not full-on democratic classroom. I'm a second year teacher, so I'm still getting my footing. I'm not really comfortable going full-on democratic classroom quite yet. But I've been trying to make the point to students that this is their space. And so all of our vocab lists, for example, students make. We have a thematic unit for each quarter, but for example, if the theme is hobbies and interests, the vocab list is going to vary by class because my different students have different hobbies and different interests. So I've really kind of put that responsibility onto the kids, and I think it helps them take more ownership of the class, and they're also more motivated to do the study because it's words that they want to know how to say because they can talk about their own self, their own identity, and their own interests. Another way I've been doing that is I had them fill out a survey at the beginning of the year and share some music that they like and a song that they felt represented them very well. And I made like a class playlist of those songs, and I've posted it on the syllabus. They can have that be like their kind of study soundtrack. And I think that's also helped kids get to know each other. So that's been positive. I think even more so than in the in-person classroom, community building is so, so important right now.
Absolutely. And it's, I mean, like what you're talking about in terms of the vocabulary list, everything really, but that idea of student agency and really thinking about like, hey, this is my learning experience, my opportunity to dive into learning Japanese. And there's some things I'm required to know. I have to know some things, right? Obviously, but when there's room and space to have, you know, my experiences and my interests create the curriculum, it's just so important. And so thank you for highlighting that and bringing that up as part of your practice. So I know your students really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot really quick. I said I wasn't going to do this, but is the board accessible? Can we see the board, the feelings board?
Do you want me to share my screen with you?
Yes, absolutely. I
Yeah,
think everyone's kind of trying to visualize this board right now, and they would really greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a bunch of very emotional bunnies, so prepare yourself. Oh, this is our feelings board.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so they've all got some sort of carrot t-shirt for some reason, and yeah, maybe you're feeling crazy that day or scared or you're in a bad mood or you're lonely, which is what I feel right now. I'm in the school and there's like no voices in the hallway. I'm like, oh, sabishi desu. So yeah, this is it. And I have it as, this is a PDF, just so the students can't mess with it, but I do have a Google Doc version if anybody wants to use this template. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being with us today and sharing what you've been doing in your classes. All right, E-Town, we're back here with another guest, Ms. Schultz from the World Languages Department, who will introduce herself in a moment. Thank you so much for being here. And just to remind everyone, we're talking with colleagues to just learn what they are doing during e-learning. So again, just trying to create a community of learners where we can share with each other. So Ms. Schultz, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show today. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then letting us know what you wanted to share.
Thank you for having me. I'm Lindsay Schultz, and I teach Spanish 1 and 2 at ETHS. And I would say that what has been the most successful and the most rewarding part for me about e-learning has just been really putting community building and belonging and student voice on the forefront. From the very beginning, I assigned students with class roles so that they could take a little bit of ownership of the class. So we have a whole variety of different class jobs, from students who provide the class with a dance break if the class is a little boring, to students who help with more of the e-learning things, such as like monitoring the chat or being the timekeeper, to also students who are in charge of making sure we stick to our class agreements. And I even have one class that they came up with this themselves, of having a restorative justice like counsel in the class to resolve any arguments that come up. So it's a really wide variety of roles, and I love that there's just kind of something for everyone. Another thing that I've been doing is kind of coming up with a unified goal for the class as well, so that we really every day sit down and know why we're here. So I had the students come up with class mission statements that were just kind of thinking about our why, thinking about why we're here and where we want to go with this class, and also what we want to do as a community. And so we can kind of revisit that throughout the year and make sure that we all kind of know why we're here and where we want to go. And yeah, I've just been really, really emphasizing students getting to know one another, and any moment that students can have small talk or just any sort of getting to know you activity, any sort of community building is really important for me, not only because I'm a language teacher and the students need to feel comfortable with one another in order to learn the language, but also because we're in e-learning and the students are a little bit, isolated. And so, and I teach a lot of first-year students. So I had a student even say one time in class, like, oh my gosh, I'm making friends in Zoom class. This is crazy. And I'm like, yes, no, that's what we want. So yeah, those have all been like the really rewarding aspects of e-learning, and that have made it, you know, a little bit better of a situation, of a difficult situation. So yeah.
All right, Lindsay, thank you so much. That sounds so great, especially some of the pieces of student agency that you've built into your classroom so far, even with the remote learning and getting students to really contribute to the community. And so I'm curious, you know, I think everyone who's listening is going to be like, she mentioned these student co-created mission statements. Can we hear one of them? Do you have one or two that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorites. This is from my 8th period Spanish 1 class. And it's, we would like to learn Spanish because it could help us and others who might not speak English. At the end of the year, we would like to be able to hold a conversation and have more knowledge of what people who speak Spanish go through. We will do this in a judgment-free community where we help each other, challenge ourselves, and empower one another. Wow. So I thought that was really awesome because they were talking about using Spanish in the real world and not just, you know, I want to get an A in this class. And also they were really specific about the type of the community.
Yeah, that's actually really amazing. When you were sharing that, I was thinking about how just how amazing that goal is, and what an opportunity you have now as a teacher to be able to pull the class back together to what their shared learning goals were for this year. So, you know, sometimes inevitably it's going to go a little astray, right? And you can kind of bring them back in to what they wanted to do. I also wanted to highlight, just when I was listening to that, just all of the social emotional learning standards and competencies that are embedded in what they were talking about, like empathy and the self-awareness of where they're at with their learning and where they want to get to, and, you know, how they can do that together in community. So I think sometimes we struggle with figuring out, like, how do I incorporate social emotional learning into the classroom with my content? But here's a perfect example of, like, hey, we have language learning goals, and we also have personal goals, and we have community goals that we can all kind of come together through the learning of a language. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next week's episode will include a video that was shown to our Freshman Advisory Study Hall students regarding some of the academic supports available at ETHS, especially how to access them during enhanced e-learning, as well as a brief interview with Taya Kinsey, our Associate Principal for Student Services, who will talk about the process for concerns for a student during e-learning, including the flow chart that was sent to staff and some of the nuances of that process, including what some of our staff members and our colleagues' new roles are in that process. I want to thank my guests this week who shared what they're doing in their classrooms. Again, none of us are experts right now. We're all just learning together, and it's important that we share with each other. So Ms. Schulman, Mr. Gladstein, Ms. Seibold, Mr. Dowdy, Mr. Held, Ms. O'Connell, and Ms. Schultz, thank you so much for sharing what you've been doing in your classes.